Good morning, Boker Tov. Uh, Today is January 11th, and we are so happy to welcome our own Bruce Mondschain. And when you say own, that means that he's a congregant. And I've known Bruce Lowe these many years. I really was very young when I started at the JCC, and he was there. Let me tell you a little bit about Bruce. I'm sure most of you know him. He's been an active photographer in the Chicago area for over 30 years. For the past 20 years, Mondschain has worked from his studio, creating both portraits and fine arts figure study. His journey includes studying with Louise Potter. Oh, there's a lot of people there. Mondschain's philosophy of portraiture work is core to his studio work. And we are going to be seeing the efforts of his work as he a beautiful movie, which I'm going to let from the words of the author, the director. So, Bruce, take it away.
Thanks, Vanessa. My wife Ellen behind me. Good morning, Boker Tov. Although it's it's much later in Lapid, but it's good to see you all. Excuse me. I'm really thrilled to introduce you to my 35 brothers. When we made this documentary a year and a half ago, there was a debate. It was the only debate in production as to whether or not we should have a tagline under 35 Brothers. And I jokingly said it should be against all odds, that 65 years later, my brothers are still my brothers. So this is a joint project under the auspices of the Jewish Historical Society of Upper Midwest. This is a new street there going down in terms of small, important Jewish groups and unique Jewish experiences. So we are thrilled to be a part of that. We are in dialogue now with Jewish Film Festival. I leave on Friday morning for the B'nai B'rith International Convention in Orlando. This is B'nai B'rith's 100th year. And so they think we're so close to 100, it would make a nice pairing between the two of us. So we're excited to go for that.
But tell us, how many people are going to be there, Bruce?
Well, it's somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 at this point. Orlando is sold out. It's really kind of interesting to see. I'm very anxious to see what security is like. And it's two parallels. It's there's a youth convention from 70 countries, which is kind of interesting. And then there's the adult track, which they've asked us to participate in also. I just want to say one other thing, and then I'd like you to see the film. Legacy is a word that is bounced around today with multiple meanings. The heaviest of the meanings has to do with money. I would contend that there's a different kind of legacy, and it's the set of values and morals and principles that we live with and we teach those around us because they're unique to ourselves. It strikes me more and more every day that this movie is about legacy. And I hope you will feel it. And on behalf of my brothers and myself, welcome.
At the end of the movie, we are going to have time for questions. So be thinking of your questions. You can always put them in the chat and I can ask them. So with no further ado, here we go. It's coming.
We all should sing happy birthday to one another.
Okay.
Okay. All right, let's all together. Happy birthday to us. Happy birthday to us. Happy birthday, dear Hazakim. Happy birthday to us and many, many, many more.
Brothers, olives, you know, in AZA you're in olive. and just friends.
And why is this group different from all other groups? It's not, except that this is one of the oldest groups that's probably in existence.
I wish I could distill what the amalgam is that makes this group this group. I would tell someone that what we have, I think, is very special, very unique.
Some of us had more money than others, but when we got together at a Hazakim meeting at Manuel Kuhn Center, there was no difference. We thrived on the similarities rather than the differences.
Is there an equation for friendship? Take a group, multiply them by time, and divide it all by a lifetime of experiences. Maybe somewhere in there is the answer of what made this group. Different families, backgrounds, abilities remain for nearly 70 years brothers. There were those who lived it and those who remember it. And as the years go by, there are those who have only heard the stories. A magical combination of place, time, and people. The north side of Minneapolis in the 1940s and 1950s. For this group, the north side is where their story began. Many parents were first-generation Americans, while grandparents were the ties to a life that seemed like another universe from the storefronts of Plymouth Avenue. It was family, it was a community, and it was the perfect place to be a kid.
And it's what your parents teach you and model for you. And then it goes on from there to the North Side community, which obviously the North Side community people helped one another. And it's not that there wasn't bickering or gossiping, but there was help if you needed it.
We were a close family, but also we had a neighborhood north and Upton Avenue North. And it sort of linked with all the other little neighborhoods around, because you could walk from one end of the Jewish community to the other in 20 minutes.
So it was more the culture that we had in common, you know, and the North Side at that time was a really special place growing up in. And so that just reinforced that culture to a great degree. And I didn't realize, I think I knew in the back of my mind, but I didn't realize how unique that was until I went to the University of Minnesota. And all of a sudden, there's 25, 30,000 students, and very few of them that I saw were Jewish.
We've all wondered for the years, how did this happen? What makes us so unique? And I think, first of all, the Jewish community in Minneapolis was not by itself unique from other Jewish communities around the country. What made this happen, I think, were a lot of external forces that kind of pushed us together. Now, I know Minneapolis was known as the capital of anti-Semitism. I certainly didn't ever feel much of it. I don't think many of us did. Our parents did as we were growing up. There were a number of name changes to make it easier to get jobs and maybe even to live. But one of the things that made this neighborhood happen was redlining. Some of us live in parts of the neighborhood where Jews couldn't have lived when my parents were growing up. So I think that has a lot to do with what brought us together.
AZA, like many Jewish organizations in America, came into existence because Jews were often not welcomed in social or professional clubs. The story that originated in Omaha in 1923 was of a group of 14 teens who had split from another Zionist club. The 14 boys decided to form their own social group. It may have been a quiet protest to the Alpha Zeta Alpha fraternity, which had excluded them, or simply a desire to be like the Greek fraternity system, where there would be Hebrew letters instead of Greek, Aleph, Zadik, Aleph. By the mid-1950s, AZA was often the center of social activity for Jewish youth in cities around the country.
There was Willard and John Hay. And then when Willard and John Hay merged together at Lincoln Junior High School, that's when we became a group, all of us.
It really didn't take any failing of a test to go to John Hay versus Willard. The smarter guys really went to John Hay.
It started because when we were in 8th grade, we were a part of a Jewish youth group. And a group of older men who were graduating high school came to us. They were the original Hazakim group. And they said, we're graduating high school. And 2 of their brothers we were the younger brothers, Philip Oleski, and you talked to Joey Greenberg. Their brothers were in the original Hazakim. And so they said to us, you're going to take it over. So into 9th grade, we took over Hazakim.
With elementary school rivalries behind them and entering Lincoln Junior High, the Hazakim group came together. There was always something to do, and there were always games to win.
We would go to the Willard playground and we'd play football and we'd play basketball. Sports was an essential part of our life.
That was big, yeah, very definitely. There were, the quarterback of the high school football team was Joey Greenberg, who was in the AZA group. And so we had all kinds of really good athletes that were part of that group too. So there was social, but there was that athletic aspect. Yep.
Well, one infamous series was we were playing for the Minneapolis championship, and we were playing against this team, and we lose the first game. We lose the game. Then all of a sudden we kind of improvised and changed the rules. We said it was 2 out of 3. Then we won the second 2 games. They've never forgotten it. Never forgotten it. Remember that one we beat Eitz Chaim? Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
In many ways, the families of the Hazakim boys represented the Jewish immigrant story. From all over Central and Eastern Europe, they came to America and the Twin Cities to settle in the North Side. This common heritage and upbringing and the homes they made were all a part of a welcoming and family tapestry.
It was this basically having that support of the guys, and not only the guys, but their families, their parents. I could walk into any of their homes and be welcomed.
We were the hope and dreams of immigrant parents or grandparents. In my case, my father, Avlashom, grew up in Bucharest. At 6 years old, came over and started the American dream here. And we lived close to each other, and there was a sense of the community coming together to raise its children.
And I think we all have to give credit to our parents. Our parents, I think, gave us very good values, and I think we've appreciated each other through all these years.
And a great deal of good feeling. And I think it emanated from our parents and my friends' parents. They all were appreciative of the kinds of relationships we developed.
After high school, the boys went in a variety of different careers and directions, but all finding their way to try and make a difference. The Hazakim group included 6 physicians, 4 attorneys, a variety of professionals and business owners, educators, and even a professional percussionist.
The National Library of Israel has all these old Jewish periodicals, and you just see guys all listed, and then there's like the Hazakim guys are also in the honor roll. This kind of Jewish academic achievement within their high school that probably also like bonded them a little bit.
I will admit this is a very accomplished group, and I think they've shared their knowledge and their well-beings with a lot of people, and I think they're very caring people, and all those people they've come in contact with, I think they've been a good force and a positive force.
We believed, and I continue to believe, to be a beacon of loving kindness and giving back to the world. So that was practiced, if I can speak from my experience, with works that befriended, embraced the unfortunate, the less fortunate.
Professional and academic success has not been the only measure of accomplishment. The true Hazakim legacy will always be the good that has spread over the years. Those who have become physicians, donated their time and services in many areas, volunteering and being involved with national organizations. And as recently as an international crisis, the group came together to offer support for those displaced and suffering due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. While the efforts of making the world a better place continue, deeply embedded in every living member is the idea that the group will come to the aid of a brother in need.
So I feel compelled to tell you this again. When I was 15, my dad died. And you guys as a whole were just rocks to me. And I will never forget that as long as I live. So you helped mold me, and your companionship and your friendship was very meaningful.
For me, what really makes me proud of the Hazakim is what happened when we were in our mid-60s. And that was when we sort of formalized a pact for caring. And that made the group special to me. One of our members who had a chronic mental illness dating back to high school, where he would have exacerbations and then remissions, and never was able to work at a steady job. He became acutely ill. He couldn't take care of himself. He couldn't take care of the condo, and they were about to commit him to Anoka Hospital. So at that time, we said, we're going to form a Hazakim assistance group. We helped him medically, we helped him financially. We sent out asking letters. Would you please donate, because we want to assist anyone, not just this member, but anyone who needs assistance.
We have a fund that people would contribute to, so that if there was anyone in financial need, we could be of help.
You knew in the 70s and 80s that if something, God forbid, happened, there were people there you could count on. And that's unusual. I think, that's not colleagues, that's not relatives, that's a group of friends.
I'm very proud of that. I think that if I wanted somebody to know something about our group, is that we help a lot of people in a lot of ways. And that's what has basically kept us together.
When we look back at all the things that make this mean so much to all of us, these little tiny individual acts over the years, they've been going on for close to 70 years. And that's what makes this so special and unique to me.
Being there when a spouse or relative had fallen ill, traveling across the country to be at a brother's wedding, acts of kindness, big and small. That sense of caring goes way back to the beginning, and it all started with a jacket and an envelope.
So when we formed the charter, we had jackets, like the jacket behind us.
Okay.
And they cost $16. And your dad shared with us that it's conceivable that not everybody would have $16.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, I'm going to pass an envelope around. We're all gonna look the other way, and you're gonna put in the envelope whatever you want. And that way, everybody will have a jacket, and no one needs to know who couldn't afford a jacket. Years later, we set up the Hazakim Assistance Fund, which was to aid our brothers who needed medical assistance, financial assistance. And it struck me that that value went back to that envelope that your dad passed you on.
Very nice.
And
Thank you.
I believe it very strongly that theme, the importance of taking care of each other, he taught us one evening and it stuck with us. And I would hope that as a part of yourself, you take the strength of what that has meant to us, both as givers and as takers. So to you and everything your dad, Marty, gave us.
Really, one of the things that is so beautiful is that they share a life together, but they also honor those who have passed away. And now they're coming together not only to continue to celebrate their time together, to celebrate Shabbat, but also to remember those in the group who have passed away, to have a memorial service. They're continuing on in their legacy, in their memory, and carrying that legacy forward with them.
As so many gatherings were relegated to Zoom during the pandemic, the remembering of the brothers that were lost continued.
And I'll tell you a story. He had Alzheimer's, and Saturdays were real hard. He went to daycare, adult daycare during the week, but on Saturdays, we didn't go anywhere. But I used to bring out photos of the past, and he would like to go through them. And I brought out one photo from Hazakim of all the guys when they were in, they must have been in high school, and he named most of them. He couldn't remember my name, but he remembered the Hazakim guys.
My name is Sharon Gelfrin. My brother was Marshall Shields. I think Hazakim was so important to Marshall, as it is to all of these men. And I just wanted to represent Marshall.
Thank you.
And that these guys know how I feel about them all.
I met these people with him over the years when they get a lot of their get-togethers, because these guys are really tight, and so they've included me.
Joel Lockett was my brother, and Joel had fixed me up with my husband Jim Landy, who was also in Hazakim, and he passed away 3 years ago. It's nice to come back and see people that my brother and husband talked about.
There are stories of Hazakim friendships that have transcended the years. And in business and play, sometimes a good word from a colleague is all it takes.
Michael worked in the library of the Star and Tribune, and we would go to the library on Saturday nights and research, and decided we were both going to leave Minnesota. I ended up transferring to Michigan. He transferred a couple years later to UCLA. We both got master's degrees in government and public affairs, and eventually both ended up in law school. I'm guessing it was 2013. I brought him in to my law firm. It was a 500-person law firm based in Washington, and we ended up in the same practice group. Michael and I, having known each other these 60, 70 years, that in 5th grade, I nominated Michael to be the junior fire chief of Minneapolis. And here I was 60 years later nominating him for partnership in our law firm. 3,000 miles apart, very similar interests, and he came to my law firm. I think what held this group together for let's call it 65 years, was a core that stayed in Minnesota. And they kept this group together. About 15 years ago, I came into town. We went out to dinner, and my son was looking around, and he said, "My God, there's 8 of you who went to junior high together." Somebody corrected him, probably Philip, who said, "No, Seth, 7 of them started together in elementary school."
I think the pandemic sort of brought us all back together doing Zooms. There were definitely some people I was a lot closer to, but over the pandemic, being once a month meeting with everybody, I think we all renewed old friendships.
I thank COVID, and I don't thank COVID for much, but COVID brought us closer together. When we started getting together on Zoom first for a funeral, we decided, hey, why just do this for funerals? Why don't we meet every month on Zoom?
During the height of COVID, I must credit Bruce Mondschain. He brought us together via Zoom with his son, and they produced approximately a 15-minute remembrance, and it was very sweet, very loving. And so out of that, we started to meet once a month. Right off the bat, we decided we weren't going to gossip and tell old stories for the whole time. So we did a book report. Everyone listened to the same podcast. Then we started talking about our careers.
When we started the online meetings, because I'm so far away, physically so far away, that I just couldn't be part of it. But when the online meetings started and stuff, I don't think I missed 1 or 2 meetings ever. I enjoy seeing everybody, and really brings back a lot of memories. You got to remember, we've been together, known each other, really starting when I was 2.
When I met Shell and I went to his apartment, there were 2 pictures. One was of his family, and the other was a picture of Shell with all of his buddies, all of his Hazakim buddies on the steps. And he immediately told me about everybody, their history, how long he knowed you, everything about you. So you're all blessed to have each other, and I'm blessed to have all of you.
And you've been lovely, and you've been warm, and you've been accepting, and you've been my friends. And it's just such a good, warm, wonderful group. And, of course, I love Manny, and you're part of Manny.
As a teenager, it was really a coup to go on a date with a Hazakimer. That was a wonderful thing.
What was the status there? What was the allure?
They were just a really neat group of guys. They wanted to have fun. They were serious about their studies, and they really cared about each other, and they cared about other people too.
Time and math may suggest that the boys of Hazakim are now, in a less enlightened description, old men. But if you could measure the energy and enthusiasm of all the activities, as varied as the men's lives are today, the word old wouldn't dare enter the conversation.
Oh, that was a tough 100 miles.
There is simply too much to do. Aside from keeping close and constant presence in each other's lives as friends and confidants, there is the very real mission of fulfilling lifelong dreams and goals. Whether it's performing on a world stage, making masterpieces of metal with one's own hands, traveling the world to change the trajectory of the most unfortunate souls by restoring their sight, to meeting face to face the heroes and legends that have inspired our lives, and to create art in that moment. And after a lifetime of careers, envisioning new ways of doing things with new businesses. The daily lives of the Hazakim, as they enter their 9th decade, are full. There are trips to take, brothers to visit, books to read, art to create, children and grandchildren's lives to be a vital part of, and a world to repair. This is a group that collectively says, we are not going to just see each other every 10 years at some reunion. We are going to be in each other's lives, enjoying each other's friendship. Our work is not done here. But right now, it's just time to be with the boys.
I think what saved us and what created these bonds was the ability to move beyond the past, glance back periodically at the past, but live in the present. So we know each other's children and of their grandchildren. We know of each other's accomplishments. And so we've grown as adults, not just the stories of how crazy and wild we were in high school.
As I sit here tonight, my heart is filled with joy. I haven't lived here for almost 60 years, but this is still home. It will always be home. And you all will always be family. There's nothing like it. I've never had friends. I've lived in a lot of places, done a lot of things, but never found anything like what we started with and what we have continued with. So thank you all for being there, for me, for each other, and for keeping this tradition alive. Okay, so here we go. They came from Willard and John Hay, each in his own peculiar way. But when they all get old and gray, who will be the boys? When Erkie's Plymouth doesn't run, and Lake Street ceases to be fun, when Marvy Burstein doesn't gun, who will be the boys? When Joey's cottage gets torn down, and Dale stops calling Shell Shoe Brown, when Goldstein leaves old Casey Town, who will be the boys? When tennis balls Bloch won't retrieve, and learning's dull for Cousin Steve, and all us men are on relief, who will be the boys? When Alan Brookins is not seen, and Jeff no longer is obscene, when Archer's address is 15, who will be the boys? When Mick gets off his gambling spree and ceases cleaning Vinitsky, when Landy brings down Butch Levy, who will be the boys? When Marshall weighs 229 and Ed don't think that girls are fine, when cake's not eaten by Mondschain, who will be the boys? When Haskell runs in 84 and Stan's gas goes up 3 cents more, when Mark's not naive anymore, who'll be the boys? When Rain auditions at the Met and Cookie doesn't make a bet, when Goldberg pays off any debt, who will be the boys? When Ostro loses all his wit and Phil Oleski gets a hit, when Bob Gale won't say eat a bit, who will be the boys?
when Bogey owns a stogie store and Manny Kopstein beats Herb Score, when Joel can dribble down the floor, who will be the boys? When Joe's too old to hit a drum and Midland lives on beer and rum, when Heller dresses like a bum, who will be the boys? When Rick to Rick stops all his talking and Ron Margolis takes to walking, when Shell and Dale and Mick stop mocking, who will be the boys? But now it's time for us to stop our mocking. The clock is very rapidly tick-tocking, so now it's time for us to go. We hope you've liked our little show. But men of Hazakim, you know, will always be the boys. That'll never get old.
Beautiful, beautiful movie. I know we all have a lot of thoughts going through our heads right now. Bruce, can you tell us a little bit, because I can see the thought and creativity that went into producing this, but tell us a little bit about that process.
For years, my sister, my wife, other friends have always said, that's kind of unique. You guys should write a book. And every time someone said, you guys should, I said, are you ready to do that? And Ellen and I were in Minneapolis, it'll be 3 summers ago, and we were sitting at a small restaurant, and one of the wives of one of the brothers, a very fine oncologist, said, when are you going to stop making excuses and solidify your legacy? I said, can I get back to you on that? So I came home and I made 2 calls, one to the co-producer now, and he said, let's do it. And my late brother-in-law, Phil Greenberg, put us in touch with the Jewish Historical Society of the Upper Midwest. And they said, we'd like to back part of it. We have a very fine videographer, director. And so we proceeded forward. We joke in the documentary about Mark being naive. I think I'm the king of naivete. You mentioned earlier the kind of hours that this takes to put together on a professional level. It was really quite something, but it became an act of love. It just, it meant so much to begin to hear the stories and not just relive high school, but to talk about our legacies and our fears and our families and the kind of constant reference to parents, the role they played. It just began to justify the time, and people weren't quite sure because there were only 3 people who saw it before we premiered it. And I think they really were very proud of it. And as a result, I just have really good feelings about my involvement with it and the statement it makes.
I'm really glad that you highlighted Marty, the advisor, because as someone who works with kids and young adults, that person just can't be, that's such a key person. Can you tell us a little bit about Marty's influence on the group and how he stayed with you? Because I see he just died, I think, right before COVID.
And it was wonderful talking to his son. And his son he told us that very often his father would speak of us. how he could. I mean, the amount of noise in our group meeting room was unbelievable. We were adolescents with strong wills and strong voices, but somehow in there, he allowed us to play in our own field and to learn. I think he saw something when we were 16 that we didn't see. And I think he saw potential, and he saw a set of values that were really very important. And he spoke about those values, never in a punitive way, but always in a, these are things you guys can do. And it was quite an amazing experience to have the conversation with his son, who basically spent the majority of the evening with teared eyes, hearing stories of his father's impact. And it was really wonderful to see.
What was Marty's profession?
You know, it's funny. I'm not sure. It's a really good question. He was a volunteer, and we had a second. We had a junior advisor who was a survivor of the Holocaust, John Grushka. And in the credits at the end, we did some research on him, and the family came from Germany, and he was quite a human being in terms of rescuing others during the Holocaust.
To this day, BBYO advisors are volunteers, and it just says something about their dedication to the movement and to what they're doing with kids and young adolescents. All right, I'm going to go to a gallery view. If you have a question, please raise your hand virtually, then for sure I'll see you. Or if you wave, I can see people now. Any questions? Or you can put it in the chat. Barb.
I know you still continue to meet, don't you, Bruce, monthly?
We do. We have the third Wednesday of every month. We meet on Zoom. We will average maybe 14 to 17 brothers. And there are 3 who are living who really decided to kind of continue the role they had in the group when they were in high school, which was to be kind of marginal. They weren't kind of group people. We stay in touch with them. One of them is the first, when we do our letter of ask for the Hazakim Assistance Fund, is the first to write a check. He's a very busy person, and that's his level of giving. But there's probably not a week that goes by, Barb, where I haven't had contact with 6 to 8 brothers, just checking in. And when someone is ill in the family, there's got to be a call from one of the doctors, not trying to outstep our physician, but to say, just thinking about you, do you have any questions? And the kind of support is amazing.
You have a program during those meetings? Does someone make a presentation? What kinds of things do you do during your meetings?
Good question. It started off with kind of setting up guidelines for what we wanted to do and not want to do. And we decided that the whole meeting shouldn't be spent on, do you remember when and who drove that car? And so we kind of spent a lot of time catching up. What are you doing now? You know, how's your family? What are your grandchildren doing? We went through one program for a couple of weeks where the 6 physicians from very different places in terms of practice talked about how they got into medicine and why they left medicine. We went through a period on our families coming to America. Manny Kopstein, who was in it, whose father was an Orthodox rabbi in Minneapolis, traces his genealogy for probably 1,500 years. I mean, it's amazing. I don't know who my grandparents were on one side. So we've really spent time going inward rather than outward and being humorous. 2 of the brothers are avid readers. And so periodically they'll suggest a book for us to read. And then it comes back to, what impact did it have on you? Because it was a reason why he asked us to read that book. We've also gotten into bringing one or more of our children to do a presentation. So we have Mickey Minter's son works for Bloomberg, is an author. Shel Schreiber, my co-producer's son, is I believe, the chief legal officer of Ancestry. So there's really, and Ross has been by my side through everything we've done, my oldest son, that we have done technologically, so the boys know Ross. So we've kind of brought the next generation in, and I think it's enhanced that part of our lives in a way they never knew was there. So we kind of make it up as we go. There's some planning, people will prepare. Joe Hyatt, who was a drummer, is still a drummer, traveled with Dick Clark for decades.
Wow.
And the stories are phenomenal. He also is past president of PepsiCo and hand makes cars. And so we talked about how he could engage, and I don't mean model cars, but I'm talking about real cars. And they're magnificent. His son just came to visit from Indonesia, his grandson did. And he handmade with his grandson 2 electric guitars that are magnificent. And then he showed his grandson, this video, so he could see what Joe's life was like when he was young. So we try and use, Barb, all the resources around us, all our histories.
That's really beautiful. Jack, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, thanks, Vanessa. I do. Bruce, this is just so moving and so wonderful to see the video, and more to the point, just kind of hang out with 35 brothers for a bit. Thank you so much for making this available. And I do have a question, because time won't wait, even for 35 brothers. And you see that many have passed away. I'm wondering what conversation there's been with the group members about extending what you do in some way, having some living, lasting legacy that continues beyond the 35.
Wow, that is truly a wonderful question, and it is so much on target. We've been struggling for the last 4 or 5 months with the concept of legacy. A little bit around, do we want to set up a fund? What do we want to do? But more importantly, for the majority of the brothers, is how do we really want to be remembered? And what is it now we can teach our children so we don't have to wait until we're dead? And so there's been this kind of progression of brothers meeting with their families, showing the film. The night we aired it, I think we had 150 people, brothers and family on, and seeing the faces of family finding out new things about their father was really quite amazing. I think until there are none of us continuing the transmission of values as part of legacy, how do we want our children to see us now? What kind of role do we want to play in that? And for now, that's really where our energies are. It didn't matter to us at 60 because we were invincible. We lost a brother 2.5 or 3 months ago, was in the film, psychiatrist, very prominent psychiatrist in California. That keeps us anchored in the reality that this isn't forever. And so what do you want to do today? What can you do today, not just when you pass away? And so we talk a lot about that, and not in a morbid or kind of end of world way, but rather the power of saging, taking the wisdom we've learned and sharing that in a way that our families can identify with. And I think that's really where we're headed in our next phase, is grappling with that.
What a powerful thought to take for all of us.
Thank you.
Keep asking if you have a question, but I, as the professional Jew here, and you may or may not know this answer, when Hazakim, when you were in AZA, what percent or how many of the boys belong to a synagogue, and how many belong now to different synagogues?
Wow, I can't tell you now, but I think the majority of us were synagogue affiliated. Reform wasn't really in Minneapolis a movement. Well, you had Temple Israel, but they were kind of the others.
Yeah.
There was in the midst of the community a kind of quasi-Orthodox synagogue. And then Bethel. Bethel was the magnet synagogue, conservative, followed the Jewish migration from the north side to St. Louis Park. There was a high level of affiliation. I imagine it's considerably lower now.
Okay. To me, that's, very, very curious. And of course, the reform movement is just much bigger than it was in the 60s when AZA and Hazakim was, in your formative years. Other questions? Really just a beautiful movie. I keep thinking that 5,000 people are going to see it at, at the International BBYO Convention in Orlando. And what a legacy, what values that we can pass on to those, all those kids who are going to be there. And that is just, it's an amazing number of kids that, and adults, but it's so amazing.
Things, if I can, Vanessa. One is an observation. It's taken me a lot of years to realize that the way traditionally young boys and young girls are socialized is very different. Role, anticipation, etc. I mean, I've spent a fair amount of time reading, because at first, when I raised with my daughter my observation about the guys, I was apprehensive. And the reason is that a lot of the characteristics we attribute to the group, and I hear people attribute, are traditional socialized patterns for young girls. And I think there is an abundance of some of those qualities with some of the boys. These are guys who aren't fearful of saying, I love you. We have cried together. We've laughed together. We've experienced loss together. A whole group of us flew out for one of our brothers' wedding and spoke at the wedding. Shell, my co-producer, was at a funeral of the psychiatrist, speaking to the family. I think it's a rare set of attitudes and values. And when I realize what they were, I'm kind of proud of them. I think they're more gentle, they're more real. And I think that's really, really important. So that is my thought.
You shared with me before we began that there was only 12 kids in your high school. I said that there was only 2 in mine. Jewish kids. I said there's only 2 Jewish kids in my high school, my sister and I. And I do think that these types of groups are so, so important for these kids. Jack, another question?
Yeah, thanks, Vanessa. There are a group of men we've been getting together. We're very dear friends and been getting together for we're kind of newbies relative to your group. We've only been together 35 years. And we're gathering in a couple of months. And you may have talked about this. I came in maybe 5 minutes late. I know we'll want to watch your documentary together. Where will it be available?
I'll be happy to take care of that, and Vanessa can help. I'll send you a link to it.
Also, I'm putting it up to YouTube, so you can show it through that or through the link that Bruce sends you. What a great activity for your group.
Vanessa, I also see, we'll take care of that, and I would really love kind of their critique of it. That's really important for us, and we've gone back after get-togethers like this and what we'll see in Orlando and shared that. We have a meeting a week from Wednesday, so the guys are very anxious to hear about what's happening there and what's happening with the Jewish Film Festival. I also want to introduce one of the squares, the rectangles, is Stan Dobrin, one of the brothers. So good morning and welcome, Stan. Stan was a big part of setting up the Hazakim Assistance Fund and manages the finances of it, and has done yeoman service with full confidentiality, and he's been phenomenal. So good morning, Stan, and thank you for all the work you've done.
Morning, everybody, and thank you, Bruce, for arranging this. And thank you for all of the work that you have done in putting this together and keeping it moving. It's just another great example of what this group, as a group, continues to do and will continue to do. And answering one of the questions, I believe that in terms of the synagogue affiliation, out of the 35 when we were growing up, I would venture a guess that at least 30 were synagogue affiliated.
That's fantastic. Now that Bruce has introduced you, Stan, I was just going to ask this question, but this is probably better for you. Tell us a little bit more about the financial assistant. I find that very poignant. The whole story about the envelope, so poignant. But tell us what's happening now, 65 years later.
It's an interesting question. We just completed our, I don't want to call it a fundraising drive because it's a letter that goes out. And this year, we just finished. We finished way earlier than we've ever finished. And we had the largest participation with the largest amount of money donated we've ever had. So it continues to continue on. But following up on what Bruce was starting to talk about, and that is, we are now really sort of focused on this legacy issue. And we are exploring all sorts of different ways to do it. We think we can raise a significant amount of money to put into, we started with the idea of an endowment fund. And we've sort of branched off into, we're now finding out one of our members has got a lot of experience, and his wife does as well, with this kind of thing. And so we're learning a lot, and we're working right now with the Jewish Family and Children's Service because they offer a program that we can fit into. We're not anxious or not wanting to set up our own 501c3, but there are areas and organizations that can basically sponsor this. The Minneapolis Jewish Federation now has they've sort of taken a lead role in organizing the community fundraising in a way that the Federation did not do. They now manage legacy funds for many of the Jewish organizations. And they now manage over $100 million. And it's for synagogues, it's for the different agencies, it's for the Federation, it's for the nursing homes. I mean, there's everything in it. And we want to be a part of that in some way. So we're exploring all of those things. The guys have made it very clear that our Hazakim Assistance Fund, which is what we've had all these years, is really just for our group. We've made exceptions. We've occasionally gotten criticized for it, where we've made donations to something that not everybody approved, but we're going to keep that fund very special and very closed. But we are looking very seriously, and we're spending a lot of time thinking about how we want to do it. Do we want to do a scholarship fund, which maybe affects one person a year? Or do we want to deal with something that has a lot more legs? We've been exposed to a number of different programs that have, we think, just amazing potential for not just helping Jewish kids and Jewish families, but helping a lot of people. And we think our money as a beginning can go a lot further in those regards. So the idea of going forward is very fresh with us, and we're working hard at it.
Thanks, Stan.
Yeah, I think you really you've given us so much to think about, and what we can do. I will also say now, I know all of our Macomb Solel Lakeside members are on. Bruce is in the membership directory, or you can always email me. I can get you in touch with him. Bruce, any last thoughts for us?
Just my appreciation for being listeners to our story. Means a lot.
Yeah. You're gonna make me cry. Okay. It was a great morning. Next week we're off. So you can sleep in next week. And in 2 weeks, we have a meditation on Sunday morning. So enjoy, everyone. The Super Bowl Sunday. You got plenty of time now. And if you need anything, you know where to get me. Special thanks to Bruce, Stan, also our visitors from Israel who are on our Zoom today. What a great morning. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.